One other quick question. I just finished the book, California Crack Up. The authors there say that one of the problems with the California initiative process is that the legislature cannot tweak the initiative once it's passed. The initiative has to.
That's true. I know Matthews and like him very much. You have to understand that all of the ills that are in the California initiative, they're replicated in all these other states. Okay? In 1990 and 91, the state commissioned two wonderful studies analyzing the deficiencies, all these deficiencies and then some. I used those two studies to help draft the national initiative. Now, you have to ask yourself a question. If back in 1990 and 91, the leaders of California knew the problem and knew the solutions, why is it we don't have it? The case I make is the problem, representative government, we're in the context of representative government. Whenever you try to solve problems within that context, you're screwed. There's no way you can overcome that kind of power because it's lodged in the Constitution. And so what you have to do is what I've done, come to the realization that we've got to go around the government. We go around the government, and how do we do that? We have the technology. We don't have to go to 9 conventions. We have the technology today to ask every single citizen in the United States, do you want to be empowered to vote for, to make laws and vote for the national initiative? And that's what I do. You can go to that site, nationalinitiative.us. This says vote, you can vote. It's not, you're not signing a petition, you are signing your vote. You're voting for this proposition. And so when we get 65 million, now what's the criteria? The criteria of Article 7 was 9 states, the conventions of 9 states, mind you. They didn't want the people involved. So what we're saying is we need a standard to do that. And so what's the standard? It's got to be the only standard we've had since the get-go. And that is whoever gets the majority of votes in an election, president, Congress, what have you, or Senate, that person holds that office. So what we're saying is that when the majority of the people who voted in the last presidential election vote in the affirmative for the national initiative, it becomes the law of the land. Now, you say, well, and of course, who's conducting the election? The government won't do it. So we've set up a California corporation called Philadelphia 2. That's who's conducting this election. You say, well, is that legal? Well, of course it's legal. In the Constitution, it says very clearly, we the people do ordain. Well, if we the people ordain the creation of government, which is what we did, then if we're truly the sovereigns, then we don't have to ask the government permission to change the government. Because if we have to ask permission of what we created, then we're not the creator. God, if you believe in God, creates the world and the citizens on it. If God has to ask the people, can I change the world, then he's not God, or she's not God, or it's not God. You begin to see that logic? That logic is immutable. I've never had a constitutional scholar lay a glove on it. And of course, I've got the constitutional scholars in support from Harvard, Yale, Georgetown, you name it. Thoughtful people thinking about it can come to the same conclusion. Please.
Okay, so you said that, I wrote some notes on what you said, and then I'm going to, so that you said that the operation of government is not responsive to our needs, and we're reading this book by Ted Rall that everybody here knows that I'm like in love with, and the Anti-American Manifesto, and he says that the reason why is from Democrats to Republicans that they're short-sighted because they're either trying to get elected, so they're trying to make things pass that will get those who will elect them to re-elect them, or they're trying, if they pass anything, it's not looking at the big picture of, of what we need and what the environment needs, so they're always short-sighted. And so he says that we should change things, and I think that sometimes what really resonated with me was that when we vote the way you're talking about, I respect what you're doing, but I think also it's in some sense legitimizing the system that's already corrupt and not working for us, And so if we try to get the people to vote, it's still within this chasm of corruption that I think, and he says that needs to really be rebroken down and started again. And do you think that civic adolescence, the response is revolution? And do you think like real revolution, so.
You've got a lot of questions there.
That's like, okay, that's it.
You get a book, she gets a book for sure. She gets all of them. You get another book. Okay, first off, you raised several points. I don't believe in revolution, because that's what the founders did for us. They said, oh, you should be able to change your government in the future, but they didn't give us any tools to do it with. So the only tool was the tool they used, revolt. Take the arms and have violence. That's ridiculous. Our society is a lot more mature than that. So why can't we have a system where we just do it? And that's what I've designed. It's a system where you can vote for it, and then once it's enacted as a law, it is the law of the land. Now, do we empower in this process? Do we empower the elites or the corruption? No, not really. No. You can corrupt the legislature. You can't corrupt the whole nation. Now, you can put a whole nation to sleep, which is what we've done through the military-industrial complex since the Second World War, and they're all asleep right now. All of you. Stop and think. We spend more on defense than the rest of the world put together. We're broke, and nobody's taking to the streets. So, it must be we're asleep. We are. But that's the best they can do. Now, what we can do is turn around and give you some power. You may not want to go fight the battle of the military-industrial complex, but you may want to, that corporate personhood gets you a little angry. So maybe if you had the tool to change that, you would do it. Now, let me describe to you what happens to an elected official in his head or her head, okay? And this is very important. This is you go with this. I'm president, I'm senator, I'm city council member, I'm governor, and I'm about to make a public decision on a public issue that everybody's watching. What do you think comes into my head? And this is not pejorative, I'm just talking about human nature. The first thing that comes into my head is, how is this going to affect me? I got a job. I'm not wealthy, I got kids in school. How does it affect me? And there's nothing wrong with that. Every human being would have the same reflection upon something that might threaten their job. And so a public official has his job threatened every time that public official makes a public decision. The second thing that comes into mind is, how does this affect the people who put the money up to get me here and keep me here? The third thing that comes into mind is, how does this affect my party? Because if my party's in power, I'm in power. Now stop and think. I haven't even addressed, at the third level, the public interest. Now, what about my ideology? What about maybe I'm corrupt? So the point I'm making is, it is strictly, generically impossible for representative government to address the public need straight away. Impossible.
So do you think we should do more like a parliamentary thing, or like a,
No, parliamentary is still within representative government. This is the good people, the progressives, get all, we need a runoff voting. All those things are good. I don't deny that. What I'm saying is, as long as you look at the problem within the context of representative government, you're not going to win. It's a rigged system. You step out of representative government, you find a way to go around the government, and you enact your own empowerment. Because what happens is, you're diluting the power of the elected officials and the elites. And where does that dilution go? It goes to you. You now can make a decision on something that affects your life. Gentleman over there.
Speaking of decisions that affect our lives, I'm wondering, what do you think about the Supreme Court today, given the last decade or so, starting with Florida, where they I don't know how they became the deciding factor of that election, and then also I'm thinking of that recent, last year's corporate ruling.
Citizens United.
It just seems really kind of weird.
It's terrible. It's terrible. And for those progressives who think they're going to stand up against this tidal wave, the tsunami coming at you, and that's what Citizens United is, a tsunami coming at you. You think you're going to stop that flow of water? Huh? In your dreams. In your dreams. Because they've now codified what they've been doing all along. And that is, put not only the individual on top of the elites as individuals, but they're vehicles of aggregating wealth and power. That's what's on top, and that's what we're facing. And even with the internet and all of that, I gotta tell you, that's what we're facing, and I don't see a way to, I'll tell you very candidly, after 16 years of elective office, being involved in politics and causes since I was 15 years old, and I'm 81 years old, I have no faith in representative government. I think it can be improved. I think it's important, but I want to have a partnership of the people and representative government, and it'll be a win-win. Okay? But you're quite right. Sir.
I got a couple questions. One, I'm a former Greenpeace employee for 3 years.
Great,
so
man.
almost
Okay.
4 years, so I didn't know about that with you, and I find that's interesting. You say that we're a mature society and that we can handle this initiative process, but recently we had Prop 8, and that seemed like, Taco Bell's classic example of tyranny of the majority, which is the gay marriage, outlawing gay marriage in the state of California. And we also saw in Arizona a bill, that's a show us your paper immigration bill. These are society, our state and our neighboring state practically, have been tyrannical to certain people, just recently.
Well, but
So-
you gotta keep in mind why. As I pointed out, 20% of the people are dumb as fence posts. And so let me repeat, I sincerely believe that 20% of people are just dumb. They don't know what the hell's going on. And so when you now take, and part of that group may be the religious nuts way over there. So, but it's an interesting process. When I was first in public office in the Senate, I was going to introduce legislation with respect to gays. And Ellen Cranston, this was in the year I was running for re-election. I didn't particularly care to get re-elected anyway. But Ellen Cranston talked me out of it. And what was happening then was that probably 55-45, the nation was against gays, straight away. Now, it's 55-45, total acceptance of gays. And I just saw a poll recently where gay marriage is now accepted by more than 50% of the American people.
I saw that too.
But what is that? That instructs you by saying that as we focus on an issue, and you may think you lost in that initiative, but you educated the nation in that issue. And as a product of that education, people started to reflect on it and say, well, it's ridiculous. Why can't they get married? So that's the dynamic of going from civic adolescence to civic adulthood. And the process of that is going out and fighting the good cause. And I encourage people. I never rain on anybody's parade on causes. I may not get out there and do the same thing they're doing because I look at it differently. But it's important to fight the good fight all the time. Always give pushback. The reason why the Democrats are in the toilet today is because there's no pushback. There's no pushback. When they say, oh, you're not patriotic if you don't vote for this military budget, which is an insane budget. But you give pushback. And that's what I was doing when I was in the Senate. That's why I was a maverick. And I pissed off a lot of people.
So are you saying that it's kind of like your initiative idea could be self-correcting if the majority makes a huge amount of mistake, like outlawing something?
They'll feel the pain immediately, and they'll turn around and correct it.
And they'll send another initiative
Immediately.
to correct it.
And right now what happens, when the people feel the pain, the politicians don't, so they don't mess with it. Because they'd have to admit they made a mistake. See, once you're in command and you make a mistake, you'll admit it. I want to vote on it again. I made a mistake. I don't want that. Politicians can't act that way. Because if they do, they said, I made a mistake. Well, then, lo and behold, they're going to use that against me in the next campaign. So have you ever heard a politician admit a mistake unless it was some structured kind of thing? Never. They don't admit mistakes because it gives the tool the ability to destroy themselves to somebody else.